We are at the Keep at Portchester Castle, which features in Chapter 15. Chapter 15 will be read to you by Miss Williamson, who is an English teacher. Enjoy.
Chapter 15, Magic Light. Within the great keep of Portchester Castle was a room with a single desk and chair, waiting for the Lord Admiral. Upon the table was a radio broadcast system and a suited and booted mole holding ready a microphone and twiddling some dials. "Sire, your empire awaits," he said as he brought the microphone closer to Gizor, who stepped into the light and sat down at the table. He began. "It is within this day and in this hour that I, Admiral Grey, High Commander of the fleet at Ratufene Jean de Gizor, speak to you in victory. Resistance has been crushed. Mighty Portsmouth reigns the harbour, and Gosport is of new power under my rule. It has been a bloody war, and there have been many losses. In our victory we will remember them and the sacrifice made for our freedom under what was the tyranny of the Red Rule. No more. Our pure pedigree survives and will go on, untainted by the Red Scroll. There will be some that have doubted me in my resolve. I hereby forgive this transgression, and there will be a place for you in my empire as we rebuild our mighty Portsmouth. Victory is ours. Hail Gizor!" The radio address was heard across the two nations, in the streets of Gosport and the outside spaces of Portsmouth. From the Alva village to the tunnels beneath Priddy's, from the Coal Exchange Inn to the dockyards and beyond. He may have fooled some with his premature declaration of victory, but there was a strong band of peaceful people scattered across his empire, spurred on with determination to overthrow this madman. Following his address, Gizor left the castle and by convoy travelled towards the hills like a coward. The tunnels beneath Portsdown Hill were chalky to touch as they travelled deeper into them. Lady Ellen was taking up the front with her band of lovelies, following obediently behind. The sewer rats were dragging up the rear, apart from Squidge, who was helping Mary navigate the uneven path beneath her paws. The muffled radio sounds from Gizor's address were still echoing along the walls of the tunnel. Hail Gizor. "Watch out for that rock there, missus," said Squidge, pointing at a protruding piece of chalk white chivalrously holding her paw. "Why, thank you, Squidge," she politely replied. "How much further, Lady Ellen?" she called out. "Not far at all, just up here, I believe," she said. Ellen suddenly stopped in her tracks and threw her back up against the chalky rock in a star-like position with her arms outstretched flat against the wall. Her long tartan-pleated skirt caught the wind and blew slightly back into the tunnel. She looked at her group and placed her paw to her lips to silence them. They had reached the end of the tunnel, and just around the bend was the opening. She signalled for them all to move closer to her position, but to do so quietly. "Where does it lead, Lady Ellen?" asked Jane as she crouched down low, which, given her size, was hardly necessary. "If my calculations are correct, we should be directly under the centre of Fort Nelson," she said. The group looked at each other, not really understanding Lady Ellen's plan. "Now, if my bumbling old fool of a brother is correct, and your late husband knew his left paw from his right, then at the entrance of this fort is the biggest cannon ever made." "You mean to say we're going to drag it through the tunnels back to Gosport?" asked Mary, bewildered by such an impossible thought. "No, Mary, we're not going to drag it anywhere," she replied, crouching down and peering round the bend of the tunnel. "We're going to fire it." "Oh, dearie me," said Gertie. "Are we ready?" said Agatha, watching Hertha tie a rope tightly around Berry's waist. Well, I may have failed to mention that I don't really like heights, particularly dangerous heights involving big drops and bombs going off at the same time. Just thought I would mention it." "You'll be fine, Berry," replied Hertha, tugging on the rope. "And besides, it's not the fall that'll hurt, it's the landing. Just keep your feet flat, knees bent, and don't look down." Berry climbed up onto the embrasure ledge and began edging out backwards very slowly. "I'm not even sure I'm going to fit, to be perfectly honest with you," he said. Hertha snuck a peek over Berry's flat body, which was now half in, half out the window. She looked over at Beaky, who was still marching up and down outside the entrance to the cathedral, then glanced over at a soldier who was marching past the square tower in the distance. She watched as he saluted the bust of Gizor sitting in the wall. She turned to face Floppy and Agatha, who were standing watching them both. "Right," she said. "No time for goodbyes. We'll see you at the bottom. We'll be waiting in position." She took a last glance at Floppy, then at Agatha, who nodded in agreement. "Be brave, Floppy," she said. "I'll be as brave as all of us. I like adventures, I do." Hertha nodded to him affectionately, shoved Berry's shoulders with her paws, and climbed out the window behind him. Agatha and Floppy rushed to the window to see if their friends had made it to the ground safely. They had lowered themselves to the pitched roof of the cathedral, slid down its tiles, and landed side by side on the grass, flat on their backs. Berry raised his paw to signal that they were okay. Both, however, were a little dazed by the far from gracious fall. Hertha picked herself up and yanked Berry to hide in the nearby shrubs. Giesel personnel were still everywhere.